Hi, everybody. I'm Sue Hillyard, and I'm here today with Rav Chahal, and we are doing our next episode in our up close and personal interviews with your favorite astrologers. And today, our favorite astrologer is Laura Nalbandian. Welcome, Laura. It's so good to have you here.
So much, Sue. Thanks so much, Raf, for having me. Glad we could find time to do this.
Absolutely. And Laura has been very gracious to allow us to look at her chart as we talk about her journey with astrology. So let's take a look here. And so why don't we start with what is it that drew you to astrology, and how does it show in your chart?
Well, I was not drawn to astrology. My mother started studying astrology when I was 6, and she opened the bookstore when I was 16. I think I took my first class that summer, but it was math, which I now love, which I found boring then, and I didn't want to do it. Um, so I went off, I graduated from high school, did my thing, tried college, didn't like it, um, and went back to work at the bookstore, somewhere like 18, 19 years old, and was working there. And then my parents conspired behind my back and said, my father came to me and he said, "You're fired from the bookstore because as long as you're comfortable here, you'll never go find what it is you're supposed to do in life." So I tried college again and went out and worked, started as a switchboard operator in an accounting firm and eventually became a bookkeeper for a large accounting firm. And then I got pregnant. Well, I got married and then I got pregnant before we had planned it, misplan everything, and then the universe goes, this is what we're doing. So I decided I didn't want to put my daughter in daycare. So my mother was like, "Come back to the bookstore and bring my granddaughter with you." So I went back to the bookstore. That was 1983, right after Jen was born. And I then became the manager of the bookstore. And I realized that to be a good manager of an astrological bookstore, now it had a lot of metaphysical books, which I was well versed in. I'd been reading metaphysical books since I was 16. So the astrology, I wasn't really interested in. But now here I am, the manager of a bookstore, and people are coming in asking me questions about books and this and that. And I'm like, I don't know. So I was like, I should probably take some classes. So I took a class from my mom again, and then got up into Jeffrey's classes and was like, oh my God, I cannot do this. I can't do this. This is too hard. So I quit. And then mom, she's like, okay, fine. And then she would just start dropping hints like she used to do. Well, don't you think you should go back and, it'd be really good, you're the manager of the bookstore. So I started taking the classes again and got into it and then promptly quit again. I was like, my left brain is not going to get this. I can memorize things really well, but this whole blend this thing together and be creative was like way beyond me. And I was like, no, I can't do this. I quit. So I quit again. And then mom let it kind of sit. And then over time, she was like, and I was like, yeah, I really should. So I went back again. And I don't know, something happened, something clicked, and it started to make sense. I became a little obsessed with it, had still no intention of being a professional astrologer. I was going to be happy, my little Taurus moon, happy in being the manager of the family bookstore, do that. I was good. So I become a little bit obsessed by astrology. I start a study group. That study group went on for probably 3 or 4 years. I studied with Jeffrey, taking all the levels of astrology over, and I took like 2 or 3 classes at a time. I have a Jupiter Sun sextile that's pretty tight. It's a crescent phase. Um, but I kind of link that to my blessings of the teachers and the gifts that have come my way. My mother's Jupiter was 26 Capricorn sitting on my sun, sextiling my natal Jupiter. So she opened the doors for me, provided me all this at no cost. I didn't have to pay for classes. I really didn't have to pay for books. I could read them. If I didn't break the spines, I could read all the books I wanted and then put them back on the shelf, ever so nice and neat. And if I wanted books, I can get them. I can get them at wholesale. So I'm very blessed, no question. I'm making it sound rather glib, but I have been blessed, and I recognize that fully, solely, and I have nothing but gratitude for the universe, my mother, and Jeffrey. And so, all this stuff came my way, and I just took it all in, absorbed as much as I could, and still had no plans to be a professional astrologer. Life conspired otherwise. My husband jokes around saying that I should write a book called The Reluctant Astrologer because I did almost everything I could to avoid it, being a professional astrologer. I just kept saying no to it, and the universe kept saying, no, no, we're not taking no. And literally, the universe conspired. And when I say literally, it was quite literal. Every day on my way to work to the bookstore, pretty much, I would say probably 3 to 5 times a week, somebody would move over into my lane that I was in, shoving me out of my lane. Literally. I was constantly being moved. The universe is saying, give it up. Go do this. And then a big event happened that I don't need to get into at a personal level with my brother. And boom, there I was. Okay, now I'm a professional astrologer having to make my way. I think that astrologically, certainly the education and the gifts that came my way is the Jupiter Sun sextile for sure. The astrology I linked to Uranus in the 12th on the ascendant. I see Uranus on the ascendant in the 9th, on the midheaven in the 9th or on the ascendant in the 12th as a good indication whether somebody has talents to make a business out of astrology, not just a talent for astrology, but a talent to make a business out of astrology. Secondarily, Uranus on the IC in the 3rd and Uranus on the descendant in the 6th. So it's the mutable houses applying into the angles. Do I see it when it's crossed over being in the cardinal houses? Yes, but for some reason, this is following along the Goncoulin method of the research that was done by Francois and Michel Goncoulin, French researchers who did the Mars effect, and Mars being within a certain range of the angle. And I found for astrology, for me, looking at Uranus in range around the angles with the stronger being to the mutable side. And then I have a Mercury Pluto trine. I have a Pluto moon trine. I have that grand trine in Earth. I just think it gives a good solid base. I have developed over the course of my own personal growth and doing astrology that this describes my capacity for as a weird kind of, it's not weird, it's just a natural kind of understanding of the emotional dynamics that are in play for other people and myself. That I have a interest, it's almost like this, it just comes together and I understand it. It's like, I don't know how better to describe it. It took a lot of years of digging, but it then became natural.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, so many things to touch on. One is I remember your mom Maggie from NORWAC, and I also remember how close you guys were, but yet you always have this um, uh, I don't know. You had a wonderful relationship in my observation, and for you to be able to tell, to walk away and come back, and walk away and come back, I think is really interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was the instigator behind me teaching. She was like, "Well, don't you think
Mm.
it's time you teach?" I'm like, "Mom, I don't want to."
But she
Laura,
knew.
I yeah, I just want to add there. It's interesting how you've really emphasized the element of timing, timing in life. It's that whole saying of man plans and God laughs. But, even in your birth chart, your Taurus moon, 10th house, Mars in Taurus, 10th house. It's like in your mind, it's like I'm taking my own time, but the universe is kind of you think you're taking your time, but we're also instigating this. So it's kind of like you're co-creating with the universe, right? That Uranus retrograde in Leo in the 12th house. In a way, you've had to surrender to the higher purpose of your life, right? That individuality that's come in time. And you talk about the books. South Node in Aries in the ninth house, that knowledge you've come with from previous incarnations. So it's interesting that you're like, oh, it wasn't coming to me. But for me, it's because the timing wasn't there.
Yeah.
And it was gonna come when the timing was right. And earlier, just before we got online, I was speaking to Sue and I said to Sue, I get a sense of an Aries with Laura. Is she an Aries somewhere? And Sue's like, no, she's a Capricorn sun. And I was like, I'm sensing Aries somehow. But that's because I've seen you teach and I love it because it's very much instinctual and it's information that comes and it's just direct, Laura. And I love it. I'm essentially I have a Pluto in the first house, so I can maybe resonate with the Aries energy there.
Oh, for
But
sure.
yeah, you talk about timing and it's very much it's like I didn't plan this, but in life I also didn't plan to be an astrologer. It was never on my to-do list if I think back in time. And it's just you've just got to flow with life in that sense. And that Uranus on that cusp in the 12th house to that ascendant, you just don't know when that event's gonna come up. And you just have to deal with it, right? And
Without
and that cap
question. And I've learned to ride that wave.
yeah.
It's a bit of water. Well, it's water, fire, and electrical together, all because it's Uranus
Yes.
and Leo in the 12th. But I've learned to ride that and not question it,
Yeah.
as much as my willful nature of all of that soul Aries energy. The first house, Pluto, South Node Aries, but that South Node is ruled by Mars and Taurus. It's a very willful kind of I will my way kind of energy. And I've
Yeah.
had to learn through being humbled that I can either ride the wave or get smashed by the wave,
Well,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and
I
it's
prefer I prefer to ride the wave.
I find it interesting that you talking about a wave and Leo, but you also have your Uranus's, I mean, just a little over 3 degrees from the north node of Neptune. But that, I mean, that is, seems like it would, speak to that wave and just the knowledge coming, just kind of appearing, just
It does. I've
Mm.
often told people that the experience of doing a reading or teaching a class, though I have years of study, is like there's a moment where there is nothing. There's no knowledge, there's nothing. And then something happens. I have no idea in anything that I teach, in any reading that I'm going to do, I have zero idea what I'm going to say because that's nothing pre planned. There is just that moment where it all drops in and everything, not everything, but a lot of things make sense. Somebody once said that when they watched me teach, it was like this energy over here. It was like this blue, there was this thing and there was this blue light that was just running into me. Like this channeling. And I don't say I channel. I just think I just reach for a higher part of myself. And I think that's the Uranus in the 12th. And it does quincunx my Mercury. And I have an interesting story to tell you about that Uranus Mercury quincunx. I told you I started a study group many years ago, once I started really getting into my classes. And there was a group of students that we all, went to Jeffrey's classes. And so we wanted to work the material. And we decided to do a whole series on planets, aspects and phases. And one of the students had moved away for a while and came back into town for a visit and called me to find out if the study group was still going. And I said, yeah. And he said, can I jump in tonight? And I said, yeah, you can jump in. So it so happened that we were talking about my Uranus Mercury gibbous quincunx that night. And this guy, who I cannot even remember his name now, I remember his voice because it's seared into my brain, said that night, because this was 1986, 1980, it was 86, 87. I just started teaching my very first class. And this guy said to me, well, this tells me that you don't have any original thought, that you are just a parrot of your mother and Jeffrey. And I started to turn beet red because that's my Mercury in Capricorn conjunct Saturn. That, that part of it was, the Leo being humiliated in front of people. And my worst thought was, why am I even doing this? Mm-hmm. Right? Jeffrey Green exists. My mother exists. Who wants to hear what I have to say? Right? So for somebody to literally in front of a group of my peers say to me, you have no original thought, Uranus, Mercury. So I started to get defensive. Luckily, an older woman who was there kind of calmed the situation down, said, no need to get defensive here. Let's just stay open and hear what people have to say. I have no memory of anybody saying anything else except for those two things. The very next day, my voice was gone. Laryngitis out of the blue. All I could do was croak out sound. This lasted for 3 days of no voice. This spun me inward, gibbous, tumbling in on myself, analyzing. Oh my God. And then I finally came to a moment where, well, screw it, right? I'm me. I will find my voice. I have a voice. And boom, my voice returned. Wow. Not in that moment, but the next day after that, after I'd gone through all this turmoil, I did find my voice. And I learned to allow that Uranus in the 12th, quincunxing that Mercury. I allow that Uranus to just send the information to Mercury, because that Mercury in Capricorn wanted to control everything. It wanted to give everything form and define everything and, and measure everything. And then it became just dull and stuck and drab. And I invited a friend of mine to the very first class I taught, and it was that. And I invited her so she could give me some feedback. And so after the class, I said, well, so what do you think? And she said, that was awful. She said, that was awful. And here's why it was awful. Because you didn't speak from your voice. All you did was speak from, here's what Jeffrey says, here's what my mom says, here's what Joanne Wickenberg says, here's what so-and-so says. I reference books, and I didn't let people know what it is I thought about it. So these are moments in time that were the Iranian cattle prod that I needed, the lightning bolt, the shocks that I needed to help move me along. And they were always on time and always necessary. And luckily, in some of those cases, I was really readily open to it. The one where somebody told me I didn't have any authentic thought or voice, that was a hard pill to swallow. But the only reason it was is because that was my fear, not because it was reality. It was because it was my fear. And
But
so,
Laura, your Mercury is also is your skip step as well, right? So there was a resolvement needed in this lifetime through your voice.
yes, and the North Node is the resolution node, and really the key to my Mercury was really breaking through the noise of the Aries dynamics that are in my chart, was to really listen. Not only listen to others, but listen to self.
Yeah.
The
And
ruler
teach
of
in your
my,
own style.
yeah, the ruler of my
Mm.
Jupiter is a Pluto retrograde. There were definitely lessons of reclaiming confidence and believing in myself. Those were big lessons to learn. So, all
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, well, I can attest to the fact that it's worked because you're very efficient at at speaking and you know saying what you think.
Yeah.
I never would have thought that it was a problem.
Oh,
Mm.
it was definitely a problem. As a child, I considered myself the stupidest person in the room. I took lower grades in school, often taking just above failing. Sometimes I take a fail grade at something that required me to speak or to write. I failed or took D's in all of my writing classes, English classes, any of those, any class that required a composition, writing a report, I would take fails on them because I was not willing to take the risk. To try to communicate and articulate my thoughts was really challenging. If I read something in a book, I felt completely unable to clarify what I had read, to tell somebody about it. It was an impossible task, it seemed. And so certainly I feel confident that I have overcome a lot of my Mercury square the nodes in Capricorn for sure. Um,
Well,
but
and also, Mercury is conjunct Saturn. I mean,
yes, ma'am.
which I mean would lead me to think about um, being careful to say what's expected of you.
I preferred not to say anything than to say anything.
Yeah.
I would, I wore nothing but grays, blues, and then blacks for a lot of years to hide. Um, I would sit behind the tallest person in class.
Mm.
Uh, I would, in order to hide. When I went to my first high school reunion, oddly enough, I've been to all of them, which is weird, not feeling like I was a misfit. I didn't feel outcast. I just felt like a misfit.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going in with my girlfriend and everybody rushed up to her. They knew who she was. And they'd look at me and they go, you're, I know your face, but you're, I don't know. Who are you? So I did a good job of hiding. The teachers remember my other siblings, but they didn't remember me. And that was something I did on purpose.
Interesting.
You'd think that Leo rising would want to be out front and center, but it did not. It's ruled by a Capricorn sun in the 6th.
Yeah. Yeah. and then, you know, the Saturn with the Mercury. I can see that, you know, the hesitancy.
For sure.
Yeah. And the expectation, because there were probably great expectations of you, even if just yourself. No.
Just no, there weren't a lot of expectations placed on me. I was the quiet one. My other siblings were all noisy in the way that they grabbed attention. They were always acting out. I'm the only one out of 4 siblings that had a Saturn direct, and it was Saturn direct in Capricorn. Everybody else had a Saturn retrograde. They were always in my parents' face with their authority. So they took up the space.
Mm-hmm.
They took up the air in the room. My mother did say to me that she worried about me because she didn't know what was going on inside.
Mm-hmm.
Where she knew, as messy as it was with the others, she knew what was going on. There weren't expectations in any way placed upon me to do or be anything. My parents didn't operate that way. We were kind of free range kids. We raised ourselves, not because our parents were neglectful. That's just their point of view. That was the way they thought it should be. They were both working. We took care of ourselves, and they didn't place a great deal of expectations on us to do anything. It was do what you want, be who you want to be.
That's
You
great.
know, that was really it. And so I didn't have any strong sense of my destiny. I didn't have any strong sense of where I was supposed to be. I didn't have any strong sense of yeah, that's what I want to do. I'm going to go do that. Yeah, I just didn't. But once I found astrology in the sense of found it for my own personal use, you know, I've always said that I studied astrology for a very particular practical reason. And the reality was that what I gained from it was wholly and solely personal. And the added bonus gift was I had this thing that I can do. Because the real gift of astrology for me was how it became the map, the key, whatever you want to call it, that helped me really understand who I am, soul motivations, soul dynamics, soul patterns, complexes and the like, meditating on them. I had my first reading with Jeffrey when I was 17, and, you know, studying with him, I never ever did homework. Kind of following my high school thing or school thing. But he would say, go home and meditate on it. And I always did. Every homework I meditated on. And I just, it wasn't like it wasn't an analysis. I didn't think on it. I literally meditated on it. I actually would just hold the images in my brain, and something would happen, and there would be this clearer understanding. It was difficult back then to articulate what I was getting. That took time. But astrology, in my opinion, is the sole reason I am who I am now. I mean, I had to do the work. There's no question about it. But that is a tool for self-understanding is phenomenal. Yeah. And I know one of your questions was, and this leads me to that, was how do I describe astrology to people who don't know what astrology is?
Yeah.
First of all, I don't even try, but if they press me, I'll say astrology is a tool for self-understanding. That's it. Because I grew up in a metaphysical astrological bookstore, getting challenged by born again Christians who come to the bookstore and challenge us and yell at us, or, you know, L. Ron Hubbard people would come in the store and, you know, and back then I was super defensive and would get in people's faces and argue with them. do my little South Node Aries thing in the ninth. And then it's exhausting. And now I just don't care in the sense of what people think. I just don't. You know, when I buy a house, as I've bought several, or I go in to buy a car, get a loan, they ask me what I do for a living. I tell them I'm an astrologer. I'm self-employed. No excuses, no qualifications, no nothing. You know, but in the early days, I say something else. I am a consultant, or I'm a licensed massage therapist, which I was. I work in a bookstore, something. But astrology, just, I don't know, it's just this phenomenal tool if one cares to use it to really discover the essence of self, the essence of soul. And I don't feel a driving need to educate those who don't choose to dig any deeper. My mom started studying astrology because she was trying to dissuade her friend from it.
Ah.
She thought her friend was ridiculous and thought astrology was ridiculous. But my mother, being my mother, knew that the only way to dissuade her friend was to study it and prove it wrong. And the more she studied, the less she could do it. And so I have no need to convince anybody of anything, or like, be curious. I'll answer the question and say it's a tool for the greatest tool for self-understanding. If you're interested, explore it.
It is. And I think many people, that's the reason that a lot of people get interested in astrology, is to learn more about themselves.
We are narcissistic by nature. We
and
want
curious.
To know. Yes, but no, you know, there's levels of narcissism, right? We get clinical narcissism way out here, but the natural levels of narcissism is to know self and to be curious about self. And we are the center of our own solar system, so it's quite natural. I don't shy away from that, right? The natural egocentric nature of the human species is natural, right? It's when it gets distorted that we get into other dynamics that have to be played out.
Yeah, very true. Very true. So, what advice would you give to somebody who was interested in becoming a professional astrologer?
Study with a teacher. Mm-hmm. You know, find a school or a teacher you can study with. Stay open-minded, take in and absorb as much information as you can. That's the study part. And that's always ongoing. It never ends. Mm. And then to become a professional astrologer is different today than it was in my day. Mm. That sounds like an old lady thing, but I've been at this 40 years. So back in the day, we didn't have the internet.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Building a practice was easier for me because my mother opened a metaphysical astrological bookstore. And when I decided to become an astrologer, she fed clients to me. Again, blessed, completely and utterly blessed. Mm. Right. And then she would coach me on how to market that out, you know, we used to actually send stuff in the mail. Mm. You know, a little birthday card that says, happy birthday, your solar return is coming. Here's a 25% off or $25 off your next reading, right? So I did that for years. And then when the internet happened and we had internet, then I literally sent out those emails every month. You know, I had a whole system to that. And now it's different. There's still some of that where you have to keep contact with your clients. So I don't do that anymore. There are reasons I don't. Some of it is I don't want to. Some of it is I don't have to.
Right.
I don't make a living at being a consulting astrologer. If I did, I'd have to put more energy into that. I make my living from coordinating events, astrology events, and teaching. And so the icing on the cake is my clients. And they all come word of mouth. And I have a pretty regular stream of clients that come in. I don't know, I don't want to do any more than 5 a week. So I do anywhere from 1 to 5. Sometimes it picks up a little bit more. I'm good with that. It's just, it's all good. But it's so different now, you know, the whole different levels of marketing that you have to do. One of my students, who is my daughter from another mother, Sydney Devereaux, studied at Soulwise, and then I've mentored her in doing weekly mentor sessions and working on chart dynamics, and then mentoring on how to build her practice. And today, in this day and age, you've got to get content out there. It's got to be visual content, not written content as much. So it's got to be visual content, you know, putting out clips and doing a podcast and making sure that you're getting out there and getting, you know, eyes on, so that people then are going like, ooh, I like what he or she has to say. I want to have a reading. Right. So the Soulwise team, that's Rose Marcus, Patricia Walsh, and I, are going to be doing our own podcast soon. It's going to be called the Soulwise Sisters, I think.
Nice.
But for us, it's not necessarily build clientele at this point in our lives. It's really to get evolutionary astrology out there. It's been overshadowed. Evolutionary astrology was the darling child of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and even into the 2000s, all the way up to probably about 2015 or so, as traditional and Hellenistic and medieval astrology really began to take off. And then as Chris Brennan put out his podcast, you know, most people are not aware, that get into that may not be aware of the other genres, the other schools of astrology. So our goal is to get that out there. The three of us have each of us have a decent reputation in the astrological community. I think
I'd say so.
I was just about to say.
The three of us should be able to, you know, evangelize, and I don't want to use that word too much, but, you know, get the word out about evolutionary astrology, and make sure people are aware of what it is. I'll give you an example. I did a reading for a series of events happened. I'm Armenian. A woman in San Francisco who's Armenian reached out to me and asked if I'd donate a reading to their Armenian women's group, the Daughters of Vartan or something. So I did, and then I did that reading, and the woman who asked me then gave a gift certificate to her husband. Her husband gave her a gift certificate, and then they collectively gave a gift certificate to their son. I say all that to get to the son, who had been studying with Chris Brennan, and his parents give him an EA reading. And it blew him out of the water to such an extent. First of all, he's like, I didn't even know evolutionary astrology existed.
Wow.
This is amazing, and is switching from traditional astrology to because he's now obsessed with it, as people can get.
Pluto and all.
Yeah, you know, it has been, just sounds so cheesy, but it's been such a steadying, guiding force in my life, evolutionary astrology, right? I can't tell you where the moon is today. I don't care. I can't tell you a whole lot about, you know, I know roughly where the transits are today, roughly, but I can always look them up. And the reason I don't is because I don't run my life by astrology. It's a tool for me to use that when things are going on in my life, I can look at my chart and go, okay, this transit's coming, or this is the transit. What is this telling me? What do I need to get about this? What am I needing to learn here and now? Not what is going to happen, but what do I need to learn? Right? What is my soul calling me to at this moment in time? And how do I pay attention so that I'm not getting clobbered over the head, being, like not paying attention. And so it's been an important factor of my life, but I don't use it every day. There are some people in my life I don't even know their astrology charts. They're not into astrology. They haven't asked me, so I don't care. I engage with them and learn who they are by a very old-fashioned way of asking questions.
What a concept.
I know, right?
So you and Rose Marcus and Patricia Walsh started Soulwise in the last few years, right?
2019, the fall of 2019.
Okay. And so I'm one thing I'm curious about is how you came up with the name, and and
Yeah, that's a good question. Keep going.
well, and how, what tell me a little bit about your curriculum, and and what and we will put a link to your website as well in the description of the video. But just tell me a little bit about the concept.
Sure. We have, I can't remember how we came up. Obviously, the word soul was going to have to be in there somewhere.
Of course.
We thought about the triple goddess. We thought about the triple this or that because there were three of us. I don't know. We were just all spitballing. I don't know who came up with it. What about Soul Wise? And so the Soul Wise School of Evolutionary Astrology was born. We started out just teaching the Pluto method, and all that came with the archetypes from an evolutionary point of view, aspects and phases, all the node work, and then the Pluto material. And then I realized that we really needed a level 1, and the others weren't quite interested in teaching 2 nights a week. And back in the day, I used to teach 4 nights a week, 4 different classes, all different levels. And so teaching 2 nights a week wasn't a stretch for me. So I started level 1, which was the basics of understanding the archetypes, and most of it, the vast majority of it, is the art of synthesis of how to blend planet signs and houses together and how to do so efficiently and creating your narrative. So those students fed into the level 2. We noticed from 2019 a high benchmark of 35 to 40 students. Again, this was right after UWAC 2018, and evolutionary astrology was riding pretty high, and then it just slowly began to wane. And now we are, now we're around 15 students. And instead of being able to financially make it work to have 3 of us teaching all the time, we have split up the class. So there's usually one teacher teaching for a couple of weeks, and then another teacher picks it up. Sometimes Rose and I will teach together. Sometimes the 3 of us will teach together. It's actually worked out fairly well. It's actually fairly efficient. The students love it. The classes are amazing. I love the students, and I think we're putting out some pretty good evolutionary astrologers should they choose to go professional. But it is it's interesting having 3 evolutionary astrologers, and it's 3 different voices. That we are not all unified in our approach. I started studying astrology with Jeffrey back in '83, and his approach to teaching morphed over time, and they started learning from him, a decade later or more. And they have different methodology than I have. And for instance, I don't use the outer planets retrograde. Jeffrey didn't teach him that way. I don't use the outer planets by sign. Jeffrey didn't teach it that way, but it also isn't something that I find useful, using the outer planets by sign in any personal way. I see them as generational and subgenerational narratives, but not in a personal way. So the Uranus in the 12th is the Uranus in the 12th. The fact that Uranus is retrograde only impacts my Venus, my descendant, and my Chiron. That means the ruler of those 3, the dispositor, and the ruler of those 3 is retrograde. That has import for me. The fact that Pluto is retrograde, it's retrograde half the time. I don't see it really working at a personal level. So I'm a renegade. I'm an outlier voice. There it is, that Uranus on the ascendant in the 12th. I tend to be an outlier. I've had some pretty dramatic arguments with Jeffrey over the years because I will take my own stand. I have my own voice. And we've yelled at each other a few times. Or I've yelled, probably. I was probably more like it, to be honest. But that's fine. I have my own way, and it's great that during the course of teaching these classes, we tell the students, we're not telling you one is right or wrong. We're telling you to explore it, right? I don't take the sun as the slowest moving planet for phases. Yes, does not, it is, all the planets are revolving around it, it's true, but we do geocentric astrology, not heliocentric. We're not standing on the sun looking out into the solar system. We're standing on the earth looking out. So we see the sun in its movement. So the sun moves. It moves along the ecliptic, and it moves faster than Pluto. So when I see, like, for instance, my Pluto sun is a little outside by, I give about a 5-degree orb for quincunxes, and this is outside that orb, pushing 6 degrees. Some people actually take that, and that would be a gibbous quincunx in my mind. Now, for a lot of evolutionary astrologers, and maybe most, that's a full phase. Now, for those who are listening, for me, gibbous phase is very distinctly different from the full phase. The gibbous phase says, I can't do it because I can't do it. I'm not good enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not something enough. I'm the internal limitation. The full phase is, I can't do because you won't let me. Something outside of me, something external to me, full phase, other, is hindering me. Something's trying to control me, or somebody's doing it, because that's that full phase. It's 0 Scorpio sitting in that full phase. And when I think about my Pluto sun, there was never a moment where I ever thought, in any moment in my life, looking back, that somebody held me back. It was always me, and I knew it. That my power, my ability to direct my own life, that my personal power was, the hindrance was me. I didn't see myself as smart enough, as strong enough, as powerful enough, as clever enough, as pretty enough, as you name it, fill in the blank.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah. And so I don't use the sun as that pivot point, the slower point, because it does move. We are, again, a geocentric method means we're standing on the earth, and everything we see in our solar system is dependent on our perspective. We know the planets don't go backwards in their orbit, but we perceive them that way as they track back across the sky. It is the phenomena that's based on geocentric astrology. So of course we see the sun moving across the sky. And for heaven's sakes, why, if Pluto is the most important narrative of the soul, would I give the sun precedence over it? Why would I do that?
Good question. Excellent question.
Yeah. If the sun is not a piece of the soul narrative, if it's not linked to the past lives, why am I putting it ahead of Pluto? My logic brain just goes, I can't do it. So there you go. I'm a renegade. Yeah. And I'm okay with it.
That's okay. That's okay. So does your program have certifications or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an added program that takes time because we have a whole thing where you have to present your material, you have to write it, and then, do some practice charts that we have set up, pass those different markers. Then you have options for one-on-one mentoring with the teacher of your choice, or you could go with a couple of them. And then you do several short readings and submit those in a recording, and we listen to them. And then we determine from the a few of those readings that we listen to, whether you have passed. And we tell people no. We've told people plenty of times, no, that didn't cut it. You'll need to go back and do that again. And then we coach them. Right? We coach them on how to get there.
That sounds great. I mean, you know what's expected, and you know, and how to get there.
Right. And we tell people that, one of the mistakes that gets made often in writing for people that I've noticed is that they think more is better. And I think less is better. Yeah. So,
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. I'm a minimalist.
I agree with you, Laura. I remember when I was doing the certification for the Jeffrey Wolf Green School, I remember writing like the first kind of stint of the chart, and it was so much to when I submitted it, it was literally I cut out 3/4. I was like, what am I waffling on about? Let me just get straight to the point. And I agree with you. If you could see the first and the last piece, it's like, did the same person write this? Because you're right, you have to get to the crux of the point, and
it's fear.
It's just
it's fear that I have missed something. I've got to get it all in there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And back in the day, we used to run psychic fairs at our bookstore 4 times a year, the equinoxes and the solstice points. And I would do readings, and they were 20-minute readings, and they were back to back. So I would do probably 15, 16. I think one time I did 20 readings in a day.
Wow.
Back to back. You have 0 time to assess a chart. Somebody sits down, you better start talking. So you do Pluto in the South Node, and I can do Pluto in the South Node and its ruler in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just repeating yourself.
Yes.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a waste of time.
It is. But in a reading, once you get the Pluto, the South Node, its ruler, if you have a planet square the nodes, skip steps, you're looking at the North and South Node, yada, yada, all that, then you're starting to pull in the other dynamics. So if I'm looking at a first house Pluto and a South Node in Aries, obviously Mars is going to come into play. Obviously, it's the ruler of the South Node. But if I'm looking at a 7th house Pluto, regardless of where the South Node is at, I'm going to obviously look at Venus. I'm going to look for Venus for further information, because the sole issue is relationships. What other information can I get around relationships by looking at this chart? If I'm looking at a 4th house Pluto, I know I better be looking at the moon, because this is a soul that has been steeped in emotional issues and their emotional traumas and, patterns that need to be worked out. I better look at the moon as well. But I always look at the moon, but more importantly, when looking, if I'm looking at 3rd house Pluto, I got to look at Mercury, the 3rd, you're looking for corroborating information in the chart. And a reading you're not going to get everything. You just can't.
You can't.
And nobody can take that information in, even if you could.
Exactly. And yeah, to your point, I think that, sometimes, again, less is more. And, I tend to, I want to give all, I want people to know what I've got in my head because I can see all this. And then I realize that I'm just confusing them. And then you have to kind of.
And then I teach my students how to talk astrology without using words like the moon, Mercury. So using astrologies, using the lingo, because really the moon, that symbol, is just a shorthand for all the words that we have about it.
Right. Yes.
It's just the symbol that holds all of that. So how do you describe all of that without having to use the crutch of the word the moon?
Yeah.
So you're talking about the emotional narrative and the emotional issues and attachments and all of that. So when I'm talking to a client for the first time, I will ask them, what do you think your knowledge base on a 1 to 10 of astrology? And they will often, sometimes they just don't know, when that means it's a 0. And I said, look, the reason I'm asking is I can put your chart up on the screen, but if you know nothing about astrology, it's just going to distract you and you're not going to hear as well what I've got to say.
Yeah.
So sometimes, in fact, a lot of times I have students of astrology coming to me and they want readings, and it becomes not only a reading, but a tutorial.
Right. Yeah.
How did I get what I got? Right. And so then I walk them through it. And as much as I am intuitive, or I seem to get my information intuitively, I can tell you exactly in detail where I got the information.
That's great.
So, it's important that, when you're doing a reading for somebody who knows nothing about astrology, not to overwhelm them with too much information. And some of that too much information is the lingo.
Yes. Yes, I totally concur.
You're there to give them information, not to impress them.
Yes, for sure. And to give them information that they can then build on.
Yes.
To learn more about themselves, which is, the reason back to my previous comment, that's where we all start, is we want to learn more about ourselves.
True. So when people find out I'm an astrologer, one of the first things they ask me is, guess my sun sign. And I say, I don't care. I don't know, and I don't care. That's not real astrology. Not real astrology.
And I've heard people that tell that story and say, when people say that, they're probably a Scorpio.
Oh, I'm a Scorpio. Can you tell me about that? No, I can't. It's like asking a doctor, here, I got an ache right here. Can you tell me about that? Not enough information, people.
So I like that.
I would like to touch on, I know that one of the main things you do is organize conferences.
Yes.
And in fact, that's how I got to meet you, is from NORWAC. And you're so patient with people. I mean, if I'm any example of how many people change their mind and want to, oh, could I just, sign up for this? It's amazing. So you've been doing this for a really long time.
Now going on 41 years.
Wow. Okay. And you do NORWAC, and you're also, we were talking a little bit beforehand, you said you're also doing UAC, which is the United Astrology
Conference. So I've been to every UAC except for one to attend, and that was 1989 in New Orleans. My first time coordinating the event was the 2002 in Orlando. And then I coordinated 2018, the very last one in Chicago. I was not going to coordinate this one and help hire someone who I thought would be good at it, and they would be good at it, but they got overwhelmed and they wanted to focus other things on their life. And
here you are again.
here I am again.
So, and that's coming up September of 26, right?
Yeah, September of 2026. NORWAC is happening this May. NORWAC has been, like I said, 41 years. This May will be our 41st conference, and our 41st anniversary. And yeah, it sold out for the very first time before we got out of the early bird. It sold out in November.
Wow. Well, congratulations. That's awesome. And it's hybrid, right? It's in person.
It's a hybrid, online. Yes. And so we have plenty of openings at the virtual conference. So anybody can sign up for that. We have virtual events and virtual fun stuff for people to do. And so ways to get the virtual attendees to engage. We have Q&As with the speakers for them and so on. And then, like I said, the UWAC will be happening in 2026 in Chicago. So we're in the midst of getting speakers. That will not be a hybrid. So we've confirmed we've confirmed all the veteran speakers. The new speakers will be selected probably the end of this month, those of you who have submitted. I was really encouraging of everyone in the EA community to submit. EA did really well at the 2018 conference. There's a way of selecting the first rush of speakers, and it's based on the number of people they have in their room for a lecture. And evolutionary astrologers did really well in 2018. I'm not as confident this time because Hellenistic astrology has overrun everything. And again, not that it's wrong or bad or whatever. It's just another technique and not what I'm into. So I try to make sure that NORWAC has a full complement of evolutionary astrologers to present. And myself, for UWAC, Rose, Patricia, Mark Jones, Jason Hawley at that time was doing evolutionary astrology. There were 5 of us, at least, evolutionary astrologers who made the top cut from 2018.
Awesome.
And so
I have a theory about why Hellenistic astrology kind of became popular.
I do too. What's yours?
Pluto and Capricorn.
Oh, mine is that it's easier. Because it has harder rules. Something's good, something's bad. Evolutionary astrology doesn't. It requires a deeper inner look at self that traditional astrology does not.
That's true. Yep. And people are not, some aren't ready for, but when they are.
Here's the thing. Dane Rudyhar had a marvelous quote that I will always butcher because I can never get it exactly right. But to sum up, he said, an astrologer can't go any deeper into another person's chart than they've gone into their own. Mm-hmm. In evolutionary astrology, you can't go any deeper into anyone else's soul than you've gone into your own. Mm-hmm. And that's hard work. Mm-hmm. In order to be a good evolutionary astrologer, you have to do the work. It is easier. Now, I'm not saying that the method is easier. Right. Learning traditional astrology has a lot of rules that you've got to memorize, and you've got to be able to put them in order and work them. But it is harder to do evolutionary astrology as a practice because, again, in order to do it, you have to do the work inwardly. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's excellent point. Yeah.
And then Pluto and Capricorn.
Yeah. And so now with Pluto and Aquarius, I think we're going to have, I think the options are going to be a lot broader.
I'm hoping for a renaissance of evolutionary astrology. That's what I'm advocating for, and that's why I wanted so many of the EA astrologer speakers to make sure they submitted for UWAC as new speakers because they are needed, right?
Are they still selecting speakers? I know that
they're still listening to the audios and videos that have been submitted, and I'm keeping an eye on it, and they haven't gotten to a number of the EA folk yet. So again, everybody's going to know soon enough. I will be sending out, it'll be my job to send out the regrets and the invitations.
Awesome.
There were 353 submissions of new speakers, pardon me.
Wow.
And originally we only had 50 some odd spots, but the UWAC board has decided to give 10 veteran speaker spots. No, it was 9 to the new speakers. So now there will be 62 new speaker spots, wow. New speakers, because it's been so long since there's been a UWAC.
Right. And that it's not, it doesn't happen every 4 years or every.
It originally happened every 3 years, 86, 89, 92, 95, 98. And then it jumped 4 years to 2004. And then it jumped another 4 years to 2008, another 4 years to 2012. And then 6 years to 2018, and now it'll be 8 years.
Okay.
and some of that was COVID, and some of the delays in some of the other ones were politics in the astrological community. That happens. People are people.
Yep. Yeah.
We be humans.
We be humans. Okay, Rav, you want to ask your wrap-up question?
Yeah. Well, like Laura, I work in a bookstore. It's not my own bookstore, unfortunately. But I work in a bookstore in London, and I look after the personal development, metaphysical, health and psychology section of the store. And I'm a bookworm. Like, I can devour books. And I just wanted to ask, apart from astrology books, I did look at your website. You've got an amazing list of books for people to read, and I would literally was going, read that, need to get that, need to get that. But I wanted to ask your opinion for the audience. Any non-astrology books that you've read in your life? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. If you can
I
just,
actually have a list of
gonna
those.
make you, yes, please do. You do. If you can just mention maybe 3 that comes to mind that you feel the audience would enjoy.
Only 3 that have impacted my life.
6? Okay, I'll double it to 6.
Okay, let me go. Hang on. The ones that are top of mind, the early ones that really impacted my life, Tao the Watercourse Way by Alan Watts. Some of Jane Roberts' fiction, because her Seth books were very challenging to digest at a young age. So her fiction, Bach, Richard Bach, Illusions. Okay. I read Jonathan Livingston Seagull when I was 16, and then I read Illusions later. I loved Illusions. It really spoke to me. Those were early books that I read. There is, of course, one of my absolute all-time favorite books. Must have read it a dozen times in different pieces, but collectively, probably over time, by Christine Downing, called The Goddess. That book has informed my personal understandings of the goddess archetypes, asteroids. Even though she doesn't talk about Ceres, she talks about Persephone in such a way that I really grasped Ceres for me.
Yeah.
Who's the author, sorry, Laura? Who was the author of that one?
Christine Downing. It is a personal narrative, which I don't normally gravitate to, but she is a scholar, so it's well annotated, has wonderful clips or quotes, and is very scholarly. She's digging down deeper into the pre-Homer and pre-Hesiod narratives of the Greek archetypes or the goddess archetypes, and how they were diminished and broken apart by Homer and Hesiod, and how they were rather misogynistic in their approach to these feminine archetypes. Another book that has informed a lot for me is a book by James Hillman called The Soul's Code.
Mhm.
I am trying to find my reading list, and that is so weird that I can't. Font forms. Here we go. Reading list. There we go. See if I've forgotten anything. My non-astrology reading list. Oh, the other one, A Gradual Awakening by Stephen Levine.
Ah,
That was an early one. And then really got on a Stephen Levine kind of binge of his other books, Who Dies? Oh God, now I'm trying to think of the rest of the titles of Stephen Levine's work. Another deeply informing book, series of books was Alice Miller's works, Thou Shalt Not Be Aware.
The Gifted Child.
The drama of the Gifted Child was the first one I read, pardon me, but it was actually Thou Shalt Not Be Aware, was more empowered. It was just spoke to me. Sherry Huber's books, There Is Nothing Wrong with You. Again, kind of a Buddhist Taoist perspective, which I naturally gravitate to. Books on Taoism and the concept of compassion. Lama Yeshe's book, The Introduction to Tantra, really changed a very just my understanding of attachment and the process of the different paths of Buddhism and what they represent. Yeah, so those are some of them. There's a lot of other ones.
Wow.
Perfect. I've written down the list to check out.
You can also email me and I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'll put it in the description of the video so that our followers can check some of them out.
Uh-huh.
And then my final question is, what do you do in your spare time?
I actually do have spare time. I create spare time. There's a absolutely fantastic Korean spa just north of my house by 10 minutes. And all I ask for Christmas is gift certificates to the Korean spa. And that's what I get. So I have hundreds of dollars of gift certificates stored up. And I go in and they have hot rooms to soak in so that you can start at body temperature. They actually have a chill room all the way up to 170 degrees. They're dry rooms. They're rooms that are lined with rose quartz. There's a sand room. There's a salt room. And then you go into the hydrotherapy room and there's a chill pool. There's a 96-degree pool. No, there's a 72, 96, and 104. There's a steam room. There's a sauna. You've got a big vat of steeping mugwort tea. You can splash over yourself. You can get a body scrub, a wrap, a massage, facials, pedicures, manicures. They have an internal restaurant where you go in your robe. It only is for women. And you can have Korean food for lunch. And then you can go back to whatever it is you were doing. And so, yes, I just went the other day and was in the steam room. The time before that, I got a body scrub and a facial. And then what else do? I hang out with my grandchildren and my children. That's really nourishing and sustaining, is to be with them. Being with my husband and traveling, which we will do more of now that we have a house. So we'll do more of that.
Awesome.
There you go. That's what I do. I fulfill my Taurus a lot.
Yeah, that was the thought that went through. Boy, that's
Yeah.
how moon in Taurus is that?
You've just made me hungry. I want Korean food now.
Oh,
Beautiful.
Laura,
Thank
this
you.
has been so much fun.
It's a pleasure. For sure. Lovely to
Thanks.
spend time with both of you.
Absolutely,
Likewise.
absolutely. And
When you are finished with editing, whatever you're going to do, I would love to be able to put a link up on my website.
absolutely, absolutely. Yes, definitely. We would
Okay.
love that.
And if you are
Yes.
doing any social media, tag me somewhere.
Okay,
And that
absolutely.
way I can share it, whatever it is you're doing.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.